Episode 3 in cold blood, and it's the icon back from the sunny shores of Hollywood, Florida, back in New York, and we're going over some Superman and Lois and the Flash. My Flash review is coming, and I got some things to say about that. But talking about this Superman and Lois, because this is the best show on TV right now. So like they're crushing it. And in the last episode, we unfortunately found out that Lois had cancer, which continues to still affect everybody all across Smallville, and it should. Because it shouldn't be a thing where like she says it in one episode, then everybody moves on. Like the lingering effects of her having cancer, like lingered on into the next episode and beyond. But the problem is Lois is actually pissing me off with how she's handling it. But it makes perfect sense because she's handling it the way you would expect Lois Lane to handle it. Clark, on the other hand, he's not handling it very well because he's having nightmares and bad dreams. And it's a dream about Lois being in Metropolis and the Daily Planet's about to fall on her for whatever reason. She's not moving out of the way. And Superman is like racing to try to save her at the last second. And he can't get there in time to save her. And he's like going crazy and obviously it's like his dream is basically like a metaphor for saying that Lois has cancer. And despite Superman having all the power in the world, he can't do anything to save her. And he's powerless to save his wife from the evil clutches of stage 3 cancer. But the problem also is, again, Lois isn't dealing with this in the greatest light. So she was supposed to have chemotherapy. And the day that she's supposed to have chemotherapy, Clark was just like, hey, you good to go? Like, is everything okay? This, that, and the third. And she was like, yes. So Clark, for some reason, trusts her to go down to the clinic to get the treatment herself. And the girl didn't show up for the treatment because she ended up hollering at Chrissy. And Chrissy said she found some information about Bruno Mannheim. And then Lois basically just completely ignored the chemo treatment. And she went to go down and help Chrissy. So now the general got upset because when Clark found out that Lois ditched the session, he was obviously upset. He was talking to her. He was just like, oh, you can't do that. You have the treatment and it's important and blah, blah, blah. Then she was like, I know. She's like, I just forgot. It's not a big deal. The general wasn't buying that shit because the general came in and he told Clark to his face, he was like, yo, you cannot let her be selfless right now because she's the type of person, she is not going to go to that therapy unless you drag her there by her throat. He's like, stop playing these games and get my girl into the chemo treatment. And then I felt bad for Superman because like it wasn't his fault, but he took the brunt of that. He was just like, okay, fine. So then the next day, and then even Chrissy, like I felt bad for Chrissy too, because when Chrissy found out that Lois had ditched the appointment, Chrissy was like, yo, Superman's gonna kill me. And it's like Lois is being selfish in this moment because she's putting other people, like her selfish decisions are affecting other people. And she doesn't think it's affecting other people, but it is. Like it's affecting Chrissy, like it's affecting Clark, it's affecting her dad, it's affecting the kids. But she don't see that because she just wants to prove that she's not helpless and she wants to go after Bruno Mannheim. So then Chrissy ended up telling, Chrissy was cool because Chrissy was like, look, when Chrissy found out that she skipped the appointment, she was like, first of all, Clark just texted me, asked me where you were. She said, you're going to call him back and tell him where you are and what you're doing. And then I'm going to stand here and watch you make an appointment for tomorrow. So she makes the appointment for tomorrow. And then Clark is just like, fine, you got the appointment. I'm going with you tomorrow to the appointment. The two of them show up at the appointment. And while they're sitting there in the appointment, Lois is like nervous, like, little PTSD is kicking in. And then she's getting a little anxious and like anxiety is kicking in because she obviously doesn't want to do it. And then all of a sudden Clark gets the call. Well, he gets the ear hustle call from overseas somewhere in like Madrid or whatever. There's a landslide somewhere overseas. And as soon as Clark made that face where he turned and heard, he was like, oh, something's actually happening. And then Lois said, what is it? I was like, this girl about to leave the damn hospital. So she gonna leave the hospital. And then he was just like, oh, there's a mudslide overseas. And then she was like, oh, go. And I was like, this girl gonna leave the hospital. And then he was just like, are you sure, honey? She was just like, yeah, like I'll be fine. And as soon as Clark dipped to turn into Superman and go rescue those people overseas, Lois then walked out the damn hospital. She found Chrissy again. Chrissy ended up tracking Bruno Mannheim's goons up to some warehouse. So then Lois showed up and then she convinced Chrissy to take her inside. Chrissy didn't want to go inside, but she went inside anyway. The two of them go inside. They end up going into this room where there's like blood, like frozen blood. It's like an icebox room. And then they get trapped in the icebox room. And then after that, that's when Chris was like, bitch, you better call Superman. Lois pulls out the device. She pushes the button and it doesn't work because the room that they were trapped in was blocking the signal and they were unable to call Superman. And now Chrissy got upset. Cursed out Lois again because she was like, bitch, we about to die. And it's all your fault because because you're afraid of going to chemotherapy. And the two of them had a whole conversation. And then that's when Clark showed back up again to the hospital. He's like, I'm here to pick up my wife. And they were like, yo, your wife never made it. So then he goes to the DOD. The general cursed him out again. and then they were sitting there trying to find Lois Lane, to try to see where she was. And then Lois did the smart thing, because when she was in Bruno Mannheim's hideout, because she knew that the signal wasn't going to work as long as they were in that room. But she didn't want like Bruno Mannheim's goons to find them either, because then they might get shot. So then Lois basically told Chrissy to hide around the corner. And then when the goons opened the door, Lois was there, and they were like, holy shit, it's Lois Lane. So they dragged her out of the room. And as soon as they dragged her out of the room, Chrissy jumped out of the room because now she has a signal. She pressed the button to call Superman. Lois screamed for Superman, and then that motherfucker showed up in like 13 seconds. So then he's there. He's fighting Bruno Mannheim's goons. One of them had a kryptonite blast ray, and he was like, blasting Superman in the chest, and he was actually killing Superman because the general said his vitals are dropping. And then your boy John Henry Irons showed up with the hammer. It was hammer time. He bust the goon in the head, saved Superman, saved the day. Everybody was happy. And then after that, Clark had to take Lois home and curse her out again for missing the appointment for the second time. And in the beginning of the episode, because I felt bad because they made Lois do like I don't want to say the walk of shame, but they had her go to every single cast member in this show, like, and tell them about her cancer situation. She called Lucy. She went to the Cortez family. She spoke to her dad. She was talking to every single person in Smallville that she could find to tell them that she has cancer. And I said, I swear to God, if she doesn't tell Natalie that she has cancer, I'm gonna flip something, because these two don't talk at all. But they actually had a conversation. Lois was in the room with Natalie, and the two of them were having a conversation where she was telling both her and John Henry Irons that she has cancer. So I'm like, okay, communication has been established now between Lois and Natalie. And then Natalie decided to do something nice for her, because back on her planet, she had made a watch for her mom. It was a watch made out of like nth metal or whatever the steel is that they use to make the steel suit. There's also some gadgets and some cool stuff that was inside of it. She got herself, Jordan, and Jonathan to engrave their names on the back of the watch, and she was going to present it to Lois as a gift. Now, John Henry Irons wasn't okay with that, because that watch actually belonged to Natalie's actual Lois mother. But then, Natalie was like, look, first of all, she's like, my mama dead. Second of all, she's like, it's my watch and I can do what I want. John got upset, and he basically went back to doing whatever he was doing. They're back at school, and then the watch is ready to go. They put the watch in Jonathan's truck because they were going to present it to Lois later. Jonathan had taken his girlfriend home because there was a scene where all the kids were at the diner, and apparently his girlfriend works at the diner now. I'm like, when did this happen? So she works at the diner, and then they find out that he didn't tell her about the whole thing with the ex-girlfriend from Metropolis. And he shouldn't have, because he didn't do anything wrong. Like, he loves his girlfriend. He doesn't want to be with his ex. He wants to be with his girlfriend. And if he ends up telling his girlfriend that his ex came on to him at a party and that she kissed him or whatever and gave him a gift, that's going to cause like unnecessary problems, because it's not like Jonathan actually wants to be with the girl. You know what I'm saying? Like, he actually likes his girlfriend. So he rightfully he ain't say nothing. So then everybody was like, oh, you should say something. You should tell her. And he was like, yo, mind your business. So then when he walked her home, Candace's dad came out, because they live in a trailer. Her dad came out, and he was like, ooh, that's a mighty fine truck you got there, boy. And then he was just like, yeah, it was a gift. And then her dad was like, how much did a city boy like you pay for them fancy wheels? And he was just like, I don't know. And then he got in the truck and he left. So the next day, because he drives his truck to school in the morning, his truck got stolen while it was at school. And then he said to his girlfriend, he was like, look, your dad was asking questions about my truck last night as far as like how it cost and where I got it from. And then she blew up at him. She was like, oh, so you're trying to say my dad tried to steal your car because we're poor? And I was just like, here we go. As soon as Candace walked away, Natalie was like, yeah, that bitch, her dad did that shit. He did it. So they were just like, all right, we got to find the truck. So they find the truck. And then when they go down to the warehouse with the chop shop where the truck was, and it was cool because Natalie she wore the iron suit because Natalie wanted to get the watch back. And then Jordan was there. They were trying to figure out how they can get the truck back. And this was a very cool scene, because Jordan's whole thing was like, his dad kept telling him, he was like, he didn't want him to get caught on camera. He didn't want him to get exposed. Natalie didn't give a shit about that. She's like, I will fly in this mother effer with this iron suit on. I don't give a damn who say something. But then Jonathan was just like, look, we got to come up with something, because I don't want my family to be exposed. So then Natalie came up with the idea. They threw a smoke bomb into the warehouse, and then Jonathan ran into the warehouse to get his keys to go get his truck. Every time he got confronted by somebody in the chop shop, it showed Jordan coming out of nowhere, snatching somebody up. And then when another guy approached him, then Natalie came out of nowhere, snatched him up. And that was a dope scene, like watching Jonathan try to get to his truck and then having Natalie and Jordan like take out bad guys like one by one by one by one. He gets in the truck, they bust through the door, and all three of them drive off and they rescue the truck. They didn't find the watch because the watch wasn't there. And then that's when Candace came to the Kent farm and she was like, listen, I found this watch in my dad's room and I saw your names were engraved in the back of it. She was like, you were right. My dad stole your truck. And then she tried to walk away. He was like, girl, what you doing? And then she was just like, oh, you don't want to be with me because I'm trailer trash. And he was like, girl, bring your fine ass over here. But then and this was smart because the guilt of what happened in Metropolis was obviously getting to him. So he did feel the need that he had to tell her. And if the guilt was bothering him and he wanted to tell her, fine. But because she had already admitted in that moment that she ruined his football career by doing the whole drug thing in the last season. And then she said that she feels guilty now because her father stole his truck and got his truck stolen. See, now's the moment that you tell her what happened in Metropolis because she can't really be mad at you based on all the shit that just came out of her mouth. So that's fine. And again, I mean, I understand that the character, Jonathan, needs something to do, but the thing with the girlfriend, like, needs to die. We've taken this, there's nowhere to take this anymore. Like, he told her what happened in Metropolis. She has no right to be mad at him and walk away. The two of them are just going to forgive and forget and move on. Can we please move on for this? And I'm so glad we moved on from the Jordan and Sarah thing because that was killing me also. But speaking of that, they got the watch back. So speaking of that, so now the Cortez family, your boy John Henry Irons, he's up in the Cortez household. He put in the security system and then everybody was putting their information in. And then he was like, oh, Sophie and, your husband Kyle needs to put their information in. And she was like, Kyle don't need to put the information in. And then later on, Sarah was having a conversation with Kyle, her daddy. And then while they were talking, she had mentioned that John Henry Irons had put in the security system. And then Kyle was like, John Henry Irons, you mean the fine fellow that lives down the road on Maple Street? Because now he thinks that, he basically thinks John is trying to give his ex-wife the iron, which he is. So then he goes to his ex-wife, he talks to her about the security system. She gets mad and she's like, oh, you just came down here to spy on me and be all up in my business. And I'm like, that's not fair because he legitimately did say, because when he was talking to Sarah, and Sarah said that we just got a new security system put in. He specifically said the security system that you have is only a year old. You don't need a new one. And it sounds like whoever is installing this thing for you is trying to financially rip you guys off. So it made sense for him. Now, I say, okay, was he curious about the relationship between her and Irons? Yes, but his motivation was based on the fact that he thought she was being ripped off by John Henry Irons because he was just like, why is he putting a security system in when they already got one? Obviously, he doesn't know the scope of the multiverse and all this other stuff. So, I mean, well, actually, does he? I'm unclear if he knows all this or not. But anyway, so then, it's like she gets mad. She tells Kyle to get about her business and then kicks her out. She goes back home, talks to Sarah, and I will admit this because as much as Sarah gets on my damn nerves, Lana did come at her like the wrong way. Sarah was just chilling. And then she came storming and she was like, what did you tell your father about Mr. Irons? She was like, he thinks something's going on. And then she was like, well, that's not my problem what he thinks. Okay, fine. And then she was just like, oh, you need to be more careful, about what you say to him. And then she was just like, look, she was like, well, give me a list of the things I'm not supposed to say to him. Because she was like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I was like, okay, fine. And then she was just like, oh, you're being selfish. I'm like, you're getting a little bit out of pocket. But I'm like, okay, permission to speak freely. She was just like, you took the mayor position, for yourself. You didn't do it for your family. And then she, Sarah, then Lana was like, you're ungrateful and blah, blah, blah. Then they went back and forth. And then she was just like, she's like, go to your room. And then Sarah was just like, oh, go ahead and be controlling like you always are. That's why dad cheated on you with somebody else. And I was like, oh, shit. You was doing so good. You was like right there. You were right there. Like, I was with you. Like and I said, I don't even like Sarah's character like that, but I was on Sarah's side. And then it's always that last line. It's always that last line. And rightfully so, as she should have, Lana smacked the ever-loving taste out of Sarah's mouth. But because they don't come from the hood, they're not from a traditional hood household, Lana clutched her pearls in disgust. And then Sarah, despite the fact that she just mouthed off to her mother in a disrespectful manner, she just held her face and just walked away. And then later on, her dad was at the diner, and then Chrissy showed up at the diner because she almost got killed, said by Bruno Mannheim's people. She almost got killed. And then she was there. She saw Kyle. The two of them had a nice little conversation. And then Chrissy was like, yo, you want to come back and, you know, like come get these drawers? And then he was like, you bet. And then that's when Sarah walked in the diner holding her face, crying. And then he was just like, I'm about to take a rain check, you know, and then he walked away, hugged his daughter, and now she in tears. And I felt bad for Chrissy because, you know, like you could tell Chrissy actually wanted that. But, you know, now it's going to be the whole thing where now Lana has anger issues that stems from when she was a kid with her mother. And now this is going to be, and it's like, it's weird because do I feel like Lana went overboard? Yes. But at the same time, Sarah did come out her face. So I'm kind of like 50-50 on it, but we'll see. I mean, we'll see where that goes. So, you know, and then finally, like in the last scene, you know, I said they got the watch back. Everything's hunky dory. Everybody good. Like there are no issues, questions, comments, and or concerns. And then they give Lois the watch. Lois puts the watch on. She gets in the truck, and then like Clark takes her to chemotherapy, and now she's finally going to go to chemotherapy. That's how the episode ended. And thank you for tuning in. So this show is so damn good. And and as much as I'm not looking forward to the James Gunn DC universe, he did put out a tweet that said there will be more episodes of Superman and Lois. So if he keeps his promise with Superman and Lois, at least I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and give his DC properties a legitimate shot. Because I said I love DC, so like I'd be a fool, you know, not to give this stuff a legitimate shot. But share your questions, comments, and or concerns down below. What do you think about the episode of Superman and Lois? About Superman having these bad dreams, Lois not wanting to go to therapy, the whole thing with Natalie and her daddy and the Cortez family and everything all wrapped up into one, and where we go from here in further episodes. I saw in the next episode, Lois is basically trying to have a day off, and that shit ain't gonna work. So we'll see where this goes as we continue. Subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already. Hit the notification bell so you get notified when my other videos pop up, because I got The Flash coming on my channel, which we're still wasting episodes due to filler, and hopefully when Titans comes back in the middle of April, we're gonna review some Titans, baby, when Titans comes out, so look out for that too. So thanks for tuning in, guys. So until next time, until some more Superman and Lois action, up and away as always, keep it cold, and I'm out this.